Namaskar. Friends, I heartily welcome you all to Bhim Bhashya, my audio video podcast series on Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. This audio video podcast series has 54 short speeches on Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, unraveling as many as 25 different dimensions of this multifaceted genius. Friends, this podcast series is focused on Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, his thoughts, his actions, his philosophy, and above all, the grand vision that he had shown for our country. This is what this audio-visual podcast series is all about. So let's proceed. In this episode 28, we are going to talk about, or we are going to continue to talk about Dr. Ambedkar's role as a visionary. In particular, we are going to talk about a subject about which very little is known. Friends, do you know that in India, there was a time when there was a very serious proposal considered to have United States of India on the lines of United States of America? Yes, there was. Very little is known about it, and that's what is going to be the focus of this episode. Let me first explain to you the political backdrop. The Government of India Act of 1935, that was passed by the British Parliament in August 1935, had several significant parts, including two very important provisions. One was the grant of a large measure of autonomy to provinces in British India. And secondly, provision for an establishment of Federation of India, which would be composed of both British India and some or all of the princely states. It was Lord Linlithgow who was appointed as the new Viceroy with the responsibility of bringing this act into effect. As per the act, the provincial elections, first ever provincial elections in India, they were held in 1937 and thus commenced the era of provincial autonomy in India. Following the 1937 elections, Viceroy Linlithgow worked very hard to garner support for the proposal of Federation of India or United States of India. While the debate relating to Federation of India was at its peak, Dr. Ambedkar delivered a public address. It was Kai Memorial Lecture at the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics in Pune, and the lecture was delivered on January 29th, 1939. This lecture was later published as a book in the same year with the title Federation versus Freedom. And we're going to talk about that. In this address, Dr. Ambedkar set out briefly the outline of the scheme of federation and examined it in the light of accepted tests of democratic federations in operation elsewhere in the world. Dr. Ambedkar says in his speech and book, there are 5 countries which are known in the modern times to have accepted the federal form of government. They are United States of America, Switzerland, Imperial Germany, Canada, and Australia. To these, it is now proposed, Dr. Ambedkar says, to add a 6th federation, which would be the All India Federation. Now, the Indian Federation, in the point of area, is 3/5 of United States and of Australia and half of Canada. It is 9 times the Germany and 120 times of Switzerland. In point of population, it is 3 times that of USA, 5 times Germany, 35 times Canada, 58 times Australia, and 88 times of Switzerland. It is really a monster among the federations, Dr. Ambedkar said. The units of this federation are as follows: the provinces, second, princely states, and the third, remaining Indian states. Dr. Ambedkar's critical examination of the proposal for the Federation of India led to following conclusions. He argued that there is inequality of status between the two sets of federating units, the provinces and the princely states. Federation is a natural corollary of autonomous provinces. They join the federation as a natural course, while accession of the princely states is governed by various conditions of their historical treaties with the British Crown and the instrument of accession they would sign. Dr. Ambedkar continued, the representation of the provinces of the two federal houses is by election. But the state representatives are nominees of their autocratic rulers. Please note here, to avoid any confusion, provinces is a word used what we call states now, whereas the states, word states is used here refers really to princely states. So please keep that in mind, otherwise there would be confusion. So I repeat what Dr. Ambedkar has said. The representation of the provinces to the two federal houses is by election, but the state representatives, that is princely state representatives, are the nominees of their autocratic rulers and owe their allegiance to the rulers. These representatives will always be at the beck and call of the British bureaucracy. Instead of fostering one all India nationalism, the Indian princely states being treated under the federation as foreign territories will encourage separatist tendencies, argued Dr. Ambedkar. The scheme does not permit the federal legislature to discuss the conduct of the ruler nor the administration of his state, though his nominees can participate in the debate pertaining to a province and vote on that issue. As in the matter of representation, so too in that of taxation, administration, legislation, and so on, there is in the scheme discrimination in favor of the princes. The princes thus become the arbiters of the destiny of British India. Dr. Ambedkar asked a question, what about nation building? He said, the people of the Indian states, that means people in the Indian princely states, people in the Indian states remain the subject of the respective states. The federal government cannot deal with them directly. Everything has to be done through the state. There is no contact between the two, not even for the purpose of taxation. How can a feeling that they belong to the national government grow in the subject of the Indian states if they are excluded from any and every influence and are not even made to feel the existence of the national government? United States of India, Dr. Ambedkar said, will not be more than a mere body of United States. It has no potentiality of forging a nation out of these states, and probably the framers of the scheme have had no such intention. According to Dr. Ambedkar, and I quote him, the Federation has no or very little power to legislate or execute in the Indian princely states against the will of the ruler. He quoted Section 84, which prevents any member of the provincial legislature from asking any question with regard to the personal conduct of the ruler of any Indian state, that is, princely state, or the affairs of the princely state. But the princely states can raise any matter in the federal legislature. The representative of the federal states have all the powers of the chamber they are in. They can vote on the budget, legislate for British India, but the vice versa cannot be done except on matters the state chooses to surrender. Dr. Ambedkar says, thus, the states, that is, princely states, are placed by law in a position to control affairs of British India, that is, all the provinces. And by the same law, British India is disabled from exercising any influence over the princely states. So, this will not result in democratization of the Indian princely states. On the other hand, he explains, it helps the Indian princely states to destroy the democracy in British India. Dr. Ambedkar raises a question, what shall we do with the Indian states? Some people with the Republican faith in them desire their total abolition. The internal administration of the states is a byword for mismanagement and maladministration. Very few states will escape this charge. The cure for this ill is not a popular government. It is the lack of resources which is the problem. Out of the total 627 princely states, as many as 566 have annual income of less than 10 lakh rupees. How can these states provide their subjects all the services which relate to the matters falling under law and order, such as revenue, executive, judicial, and all other services which affect public welfare, such as education, sanitation, roads, and so on? The only way out, Dr. Ambedkar says, and please note carefully what he says, the only way out is to reorganize the whole area occupied by the Indian princely states. The proper solution would be to fix an area of a certain size and of certain revenue and to constitute it into a new province and to pension off the rulers now holding any territory in that area. The states cannot be reorganized after accession because when they are admitted to the federation, that means their sovereign status is recognized. Now, this is exactly what was done. Similar thing was done by Sardar Patel in 1947-48, and one of the problems that he talked about did arise in the case of J&K, but that is part of the history. On these and several other counts, Dr. Ambedkar rejected the federal structure as was envisaged by the Government of India Act 1935. Dr. Ambedkar says that Congress was actually in favor of this federation, United States of India, but there is no confirmation from other sources. It turns out that before anything could happen, in 1939 September, Viceroy Linlithgow announced that India was at war with Germany. The Second World War had broken out. This was done without consulting the elected representatives of the Indian people. In protest, therefore, provincial ministries, all the provincial ministries ruled by the Congress party, they resigned, and as such, the part of the Government of India Act of 1935 relating to the establishment of the Federation of India or United States of India could never come into operation. This is the story about the Indian United States of India. Well, friends, let's conclude this session here. But before I close, let me remind you that if you like this podcast series, audio-visual podcast series, Bhim Bhashya, please like it, share it, and subscribe to it. So long until we meet again real soon. Thank you. Namaskar.